Hey everyone, Kuro the artist here, and... Oh, hold on a second. Nope, not this one. There we go. Hey everyone, Kuro the artist here, and welcome back to another Ben 10 breakdown. So we finally made it, folks. After about 150 of these breakdowns, we are now onto the first episode of the 4th series in the Prime franchise, Ben 10 Omniverse. The series is well known as being the most different from the previous 3 in art style, tone, characters, and story arcs. We cover pretty much everything across the board here in Omniverse, so there's a lot to love, but also a lot to get used to. You see, Ben 10's been going on for around 6 or 7 years at the time, so its initial target audience is much older, and a good portion of it has already moved on. The tale of Omniverse's development has been done to death on this channel alone, not to mention all the other channels making videos. A lot of good Ben 10 content coming out the past few years, I appreciate that. But let's just run through the bullet points so we're not here all day. Omniverse was made to 1. Capitalize on the success of the classic series by bringing back older elements. 2. Pull the show in a much more colorful and creatively distinct direction. And 3. Bring in newer, younger fans. The first two, hey, not a bad idea. But that third one though, well, that's where the series got really divisive. It really feels like Omniverse was focusing almost too much on trying to bring back kids into the show, that a lot of aspects of it alienated the older fans. Now, without twisting this too much in the opposite direction and saying Ben 10 should be more darker and grittier, you know, that perspective, you gotta admit the series was maturing with its audience as time went on. The characters got older, they dealt with more mature problems, and it wasn't afraid to play things straight and hit those emotional tones when appropriate. There was a few missteps along the way, sure, but I already did all the UAF breakdowns. We're here to talk about Omniverse. I've said this before, Ben 10 has always been a family-friendly show, but there's a difference between family-friendly and strictly made for kids. And Omniverse pushes pretty hard on the idea to appeal to younger audiences this time around, or at least at first. Honestly, season 1 is where it feels most saturated with overindulging on the new prepubescent feel, but for the start of the series, I can understand why it can be a struggle to get into, especially when you consider that many of the fanbase was hitting their mid to late teens and didn't really care for the playful and comedic tone being brought to the extreme. But like I said, it does get better as it goes on, and I strongly believe you should still watch Omniverse in order to fully appreciate and understand Ben Prime's journey. But perhaps Omniverse tried a little too hard to be different right at the start, that it kind of forgot to go, hey, maybe we should make sure the older fans are gonna like this too. I mean, everybody feels a little bit differently about Omniverse. Some people liked it right off the bat. A lot of folks today are even saying it's an improvement over the first 3, but had it been that cut and dry, Omniverse wouldn't have been as divisive as it was when it first aired. But if this is your first breakdown and you're curious about how my rating system works, there's a detailed description down below along with a link to all my previous breakdowns, but by all means watch this one first. I'm sure you'll still enjoy it. But first, I got some updates. For one, what do you think of my new hoodie? If you like it, the Ink Tank crew and I will be signing this and bringing it down to MomoCon later this month. We're going to be raffling it away, so if you stop by our booth, you can grab a ticket for a chance to either win this hoodie or one of our limited edition Horus plushies. I really hope to see some of y'all there. Now, let's check in with Fro the Bro. I feel like it's been a little bit since we've heard from him. I hope he's okay.
This world is not one that I know. Years have gone by, and there are no signs of things getting better. After the 3rd year, hunting and gathering has been the primary source of food. But now, it's too dangerous to even do that. Without a proper source of food, I fear my time here may...
With HelloFresh, you can take the hassle out of grocery shopping because the ingredients are delivered right to your door. Don't feel like driving? Want to skip the lines? Don't want to talk to fellers? HelloFresh takes all of that away for you. And don't even worry about cooking too much food. With HelloFresh pre-portioned ingredients, you can cut down on food waste by at least 23% compared to actual grocery shopping. Hell, if you're not good at cooking, you don't even have to worry about that. With HelloFresh's easy to follow recipes, you'd think that you're a modern day Bobby Flay. My experience with HelloFresh has been one of freedom. I'm tired of these fast food chains serving me the same cardboard between bread. But with HelloFresh, I'm able to experience a great cooking experience with my family. Be sure to use our link or go to HelloFresh.com and use code POGINKMAY16 to get 16 free meals plus free shipping. HelloFresh. Cook, eat, enjoy.
On August 1st, 2012, we got part 1 of the 2-part premiere of Omniverse, The More Things Change, written by Charlotte Fullerton. Ben learns that Gwen and Kevin are moving away from Bellwood and the trio is basically disbanded. Ben decides to continue to pursue his heroic career solo, but after investigating a bunch of alien gang-related drama, he comes across his new partner, Rook Blanco, who was hired by Max to fill the shoes of the trio now that Ben has been left on his own. But first, we open with a flashback to 5 years ago, where his younger self battles a mysterious galvanic mechamorph called Malware. So well-versed fans would immediately recognize this as classic Four Arms, already showing that we're doing things a little different in this show. And even the mechamorphs have super strength. Now already you might notice Omniverse is pretty effects heavy, at least in the first season or two. They do dial it back a little bit, as all series do. But motion blurs, particle effects, tons of dust and smoke, out of focus foreground. All this stuff does a lot in making it feel very detailed, very intense. In fact, with all of these trees in the background, this tree that he interacts with, you wouldn't even be able to tell because it blends in very nicely. Not to mention all the trees are various shades of green. Now, we don't see him use it, but I'm assuming that's Malware's Mechamorph Laser, a power that's signature to the Mechamorphs in the fandom, but in the show, they actually barely use it. There we go, now you get to see it. It's actually cool to see a Mechamorph put up such a good fight against a Tetramand. But look how the explosion is split in between all this different parts of the smoke.
Alright, fine. I wanted to do this the easy way.
Four Arms is now voiced by John DiMaggio, go figure, replacing both Dee and Richard in Omniverse. Now Dee voiced like 30-something aliens during the UAF era. So in Omniverse, they start splitting up his roles more, giving him a break. Some of them are definitely for the better, and I'll give credit where credit is due, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't vibe with DiMaggio's Four Arms. But that's just my personal preference. I like more of the growly monster kind of, hey, I'm Four Arms kind of voice, you know?
So, where's my prize money? That'll take all night. 4 arms. Didn't even know that was still in there.
To me, this just sounds like Four Arms has a cold and he needs to blow his nose.
The hard way is okay too.
You hear it? It's like stuffy. But great pass through. I like that when he splits open, you see the insides of him are that yellowy orange glowing texture. Because it could be confusing deciphering if this thing, Malware's mouth, if you will, is a hole or just a pattern, but...
This is the great Ben Tennyson.
Malware here is voiced by Corey Burton, one of the coolest voices in the whole show. His Mechamorph voice is also this vibrating filter to it.
This is the great Ben Tennyson.
Opposed to how Classic used to just throw a high pass filter on Ben when he spoke.
Well, I did just have the bad guy. Now we're talking.
And UAF just didn't really care. They just put the voice on there.
I could spend the rest of my life here. Look, is there anyone else I can talk with?
But this effect, I really like it. It sounds very cool.
Bearer of the Omnitrix.
Didn't merge there.
You think you're the only galvanic mechamorph I've ever dealt with?
Now this could be a reference to Destroy All Aliens, but due to the production timeline, Destroy All Aliens and The More Things Change were written and created around the same time, and Destroy All Aliens was initially written as non-canon. It was later retroactively canon, but due to this and the movie being developed at the same time, I don't think this was written to be intended to be talking about the Retaliator. This is probably just a way to show that, you know, Ben's been around the block, he's been fighting for a while now. And also interesting that he knows the term galvanic mechamorph. Probably learned it from Xylene.
If you wanted to be truly helpful, a galvanic mechamorph would have been more appropriate.
She means upgrade.
It's gonna take a lot more to surprise me.
Let's see, when he touches him right here, right on where his hole should be, it's like, is that a hole? What is that? It even looks like he's about to grab onto it. Literally being overpowered by a blob right now. Now, the effects, sure, they look great, but did they really have to change the timeout glow to be green rather than red? They had a chance to bring back the red, and they left it. Now, if you couldn't tell by the Four Arms design that this was young Ben, this is kind of a reveal. You see him transform back and then stand up into frame, so if you didn't get it then, you definitely get it now. Omniverse, in part, deals with flashbacks. I think this was a pretty cool way to do it, but maybe I would have had him using a different alien that looks about the same between his different ages. Heat Blast is an easy choice, just so this reveal is as authentic as it can be, but I'm not bothered by it.
Oh, man.
And his other catchphrase is brought back.
He's a kid and he wants to have fun. But when you need a superhero, he gets the job done.
Now, I think the Omniverse theme song has a lot of great work put into it. For one, it's the only theme song in the Prime franchise that has completely original animation all the way through, whereas classic, Alien Force, and UAF used a bunch of clips from the show with stock art, different visual effects. They basically did everything they could without having to create new animation. Whereas Omniverse's intro from the get-go is completely animated to be the theme song. You can't find this in any of the episodes, and I think that's great. And visually, it's very appealing. But speaking from the perspective of a fan who was growing up with the show, honestly, I don't like it. I think they went too far with trying to reset the fan base and bring back in younger kids to like the show. And I get that, you know, the show's been running for about 6 years now. So if you're like me that started watching the show, I think I was like 9 or 10, you'd be about 16 right now. Pretty much the same age as Ben. It's like you're growing up with Ben. And the show kind of matured with the audience, at least within the time frame of it coming out, you know. The older Ben got, the more the show attempted to take itself seriously within its restrictions. And the theme songs, while some might consider them boring, at least fit the vibe of the show that it was presented with. Whereas now, if you've been a fan for a long time, you're in your late teens and you're getting ready to watch Ben 10 and you're sitting there listening to this, I don't vibe with it. I'm sorry. I'm sure much younger audiences enjoy it. I'm not gonna lie, to this day, I can't sit here and listen to this and feel great about it. And it's like, it's too far in the wrong direction, in my opinion. This is too colorful and bouncy and immature. You can't go from fighting squid demons to this. And no discredit to the artist, too. This was actually done by Perry Grip, and I'm a big fan of Perry Grip. He did the Waffle song. He does this birthday song that I post on people's timelines when I think of it. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't like this song. I don't think I ever will. But of course, yeah, artistically, it's very exciting. They do forget Ben's shading on his hair on his 11-year-old self there, though. But it pops back in once they split and slam down their devices. We get our first look at Feedback, who's 11-year-old Ben's favorable alien, and is one of the only aliens with an arc built around him. I love this animation of Shock Squatch. Like I said, the effects go hard in this theme song, like the way this lightning is drawn. We got Way Big, Blocks, and Crash Hopper here, doing a good job showcasing a variety of Ben's aliens. Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel so much secondhand embarrassment listening to this song. And again, it's not just because of how I feel about it now. Like, even back then, the first time I ever heard this, I was like, so this is what we're doing. Okay, it's fine. I'll be okay. Maybe the show will still be good. But it's like, what is this? Really? It's not even like, oh, I want Ben 10 to be ultra serious and dark. Don't be one of those people that's putting words in my mouth. But I mean, even the Omniverse fans have to recognize, like, going from UA to this, it's so much of a tonal change, and not everyone's gonna vibe with it. We also get to see young Gray Matter only in this theme song. He's never used in the series. So I think every single alien was designed between 11-year-old Ben and 16-year-old Ben, but not all of them were used. But I do like this shot, where they all slide in. We get Diamond Head, Rip Jaws. Looks like 16-year-old Rip Jaws, though. Wild Mutt with his 2 Omnitrices. Accelerate, Cannon Bolt. Note the Omnitrix symbol on his head to differentiate him. Forearms and Feedback. Pretty good lineup right here. I don't like that you can see Feedback's hand behind Ben's head, though. I would have just cropped that out. That went by so quick. Young Ben's alien lineup takes quite a bit. And Teen Ben's just flies on by. But we got Echo, one of the first Alien Force aliens used to play tribute to that. We got Blocks, a brand new one that we're going to be meeting soon. Humongosaur, NRG, and Crash Hopper, who is colored with his pre-production colors. I talked a little bit about that in my recent video with Kellen and Ash, but he doesn't look exactly like this in the show proper. And Gravitack, one of my favorite new Omniverse additions. So yeah, welcome to Ben 10 Omniverse. They got the button on the wrong side again. Classic Ben 10.
At least pop a breath mint, will ya?
Was that him hissing at him? That was kind of cool, whatever that was. Really good to hear the original series sound effects, though. And now we got a very original series style transformation. We're sent into the Kirby Dots void. Ben spinning around. Although, you know, since it's Omniverse style, it doesn't quite have that, like, gross, veiny, disgusting crawl of how transformations used to look. It's very clean, almost like he's putting on a suit. But in terms of like the camera angles and the animations, it looks great. See, he's already done transforming within the first couple of seconds. Now he's just spinning around, but still very cool to see in motion. You see his plugs pop out. Great emphasis on that. A lot of motion blur though. Can't get too many good shots of it. He comes up. We get a really good look at Feedback in a heroic pose. Now a quick demonstration of his powers, his blue lightning. You see it connecting to all of his plug fingers, his antenna, and his tail. Instantly you're like, wow, this guy is pretty cool. Let's watch all this in motion. You hear that? Feedback has his own theme as well. One of the only aliens to have his own theme. It's very similar to a song called You Need to Stop by the Osmo Band. I don't know how that works, if it was sampled or if they just took that song specifically, but it's pretty cool that whenever Feedback shows up, there's nice, unique music to complement his appearance.
Oh yeah! Feedback!
So you'll see that even though the episode was written by Charlotte Fullerton, there's story credits by Dwayne McDuffie. As Omniverse was in very, very early stages of development before his passing, a couple aliens, a couple plot points were already thought of. I don't think the art style change was part of it. I think that came after Dwayne passed, but the general building blocks of the story having to do with young Ben again and the story of Feedback and Malware was conceptualized, which is why I feel like it's the tightest arc, because it had the most planning. Every season forward, the arcs are good, but they don't tie in as strongly to the episodes as the Feedback arc does. So we were still lucky enough for Dwayne to leave us a nice segue into Omniverse with the Feedback story. So we see Feedback is absorbing Malware, his energy or life force, whatever you want to call it. I like how it's bouncing between the rim light of Feedback for his thick Omnitrix suit texture, and then changes to strong lighting as well. Omniverse is very good with its lone lighting. See, these frames are very intense. They're underlaying a lot of spiky lightning aura underneath the hand, and on top of it doing this red lightning trailing up his arms, not to mention the character's own lighting constantly changing between shading. There's lots of visual care put into these sequences. Now, I think this is one of the only times where the lightning stays the same color on Feedback for a bit. You see he's still charging it up and it's red, but once it releases from his plugs, it turns blue to show you that Ben has taken control of this energy now. Gotta say, I really do like Feedback. He is another power repeat. You could do the fast track argument with him where, oh, we have Chromastone, or even Upchuck or Edel. Like, why do we need this guy? But with a million DNA samples in the Omnitrix, there's going to be power overlap. So if you can accept fast track, you can accept Feedback. Be nice to see the Omnitrix at least blinking when it times out though, because you do hear the ticking clock. But Omniverse with its very fluid animation, I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. Casually does a backflip taller than his own self. Was that like 4 or 5 feet in the air?
Yeah, you better run!
Now, I don't even think about Young Ben's design anymore. I'm so used to seeing it. Initially, I was very thrown off by it. It's, again, they're leaning very heavy into the let's make the show for kids again feel. But with the big eyes, the rounded head, but you're still hearing like classic Ben's voice come out of it. It's very jarring at first. There's a lot to get used to when it comes to Omniverse. But like I said, now it's been so long, I don't even notice it anymore.
Yeah, you better run.
And that's a great parallel where Ben's saying the same line and you see it advance into the future.
Yeah, you better run!
Yeah, you better run.
Pretty neat transition. It's just a fade, but they slap this Omnitrix logo onto it to try to make it look more interesting.
Yeah, you better run.
So you'll notice that it says 5 years later, even though Ben is 16 in Omniverse, and presumably everybody would think this is 10-year-old Ben. Like, why wouldn't you? It looks like him, it sounds like him, he uses the old Omnitrix, but young Ben is actually 11 in Omniverse. They do mention that a couple of times. They don't mention it in the pilot, which is this, but Omniverse's flashbacks take place the summer after the classic series. Ben's now 11 years old and has some new aliens like Feedback, but here we get to 16-year-old Ben, who also was a bit to get used to. When I first saw him, I thought he looked 12. Again, now I'm used to the art style. I understand how it works. I understand what characters' age ranges look within the world of Omniverse, but comparing Omniverse Ben to 16-year-old Ben, there's a lot of elements of him that look much younger, even though he's the same age. It's kind of the opposite problem I had with the Heroes United Ben. He looked so much older. He looked like a grown man, 18, 19 years old, bare minimum, despite still being 16. So it's hard to judge how old or young a character looks across art styles when you don't apply the art style logic, but this is what 16-year-olds look like in Omniverse. I'm liking the green moon, I'm liking the purple color palette with the green highlight. The pilot does a great job showing you how far it pushes the art of Omniverse. It sacrifices a lot of its story and character and focuses more on visual visual appeal, which take your pick if that's a good or a bad thing. But the way I see it, as long as there's something to love, as long as there's something they're focusing on strongly, I feel like it's an opportunity to tell new kinds of stories using familiar characters. But if you're expecting this to still feel like the first 3 series, even though it's canon, you're gonna be disappointed. We see them chasing Zombozo, holding a brain. Now, Zombozo's Omniverse design, again, very clever, very detailed. I'm not quite sold on the hair, but that's such a minor thing. But in the Omniverse, Zombozo is a literal zombie, and I think that's a very cool approach to it. He's not as creepy anymore, though. He's definitely not a threat. I mean, he looks cool, so, you know, that's what Omniverse focuses on the most. Like, does this look cool? And if it looks cool, people remember it. People will buy the toys. That's what we're going with. And I think the design works. Gwen and Kevin are here too. We get a quick taste of Gwen's new sound effects. No longer is it the energy vibrating sounds that her Anodite abilities would have. Omniverse, it makes it much more magical sounding. You hear sparkles, you hear twinkles. Listen closely. I think it works. I think what I would have done if I was able to is have her basic Anodite abilities sound the way UAF does, and then when she's actually casting magical spells, have them sound like this. But Omniverse goes full magic, and I think to help diversify the world of Ben 10 more, it does work. I always loved this shot right here too. Very intense, rushing ground, and he's moving all around, crawling on his hands like a maniac. A little undercut with the boings here for his arms. But that's just how Zombozo is in Omniverse, so it really works for this iteration of him. But again, like, you just can't expect it to feel the same way that he used to. You have to relinquish those thoughts to appreciate what's here. Love how right here, as he fades closer to the building, you see his own reflection. Just for a second, even just for a few frames, but it's there. There's such a high level of detail. See, now Gwen's mana constructs are primarily white with a pink glow rather than being primarily pink. But I think this looks really cool. See them all slide down. Haven't really gotten a good look at the team yet, aside from that one close-up of Ben. So it allows you to focus on the action and intensity more than the characters. I think they're just trying to loop you in without you analyzing the changes between the shows too much.
I got it!
In one fell swoop, he catches, slides, and knocks over Zombozo. Very skilled, Kevin. Look at this, though. You can see his ribcage poking open. That's my favorite detail that they gave him.
What kind of sicko steals from a brain bank?
Why does Bellwood even have a brain bank?
A valid question that won't get answered. Zombozo is much more athletic and physical than he's been before. He used to be a ringleader, no pun intended, but now he's fighting all his own battles himself. Look at him waddling around like a penguin. Again, like, for what they're trying to do, when they create a version of a character, they play it up to the fullest. It's just a matter of, do you like this character or not? I would say, whether or not you like this version of Zombozo, this version they created, they're doing it perfectly.
Come on, give me something good!
Now, this is our first time seeing Ben use the new Omnitrix, and it's already done wrong, which I find a little funny. But he skips past the hologram selector completely and just raises his hand, and there it pops up. Again, probably to save that introduction for later. Like, maybe they don't want to focus on it right now, but I mean, it's still a little annoying. And the first alien he becomes is Lodestar. Now, the first alien he used between every device was a fire alien. Prototype Omnitrix was Heat Blast, the recalibrated Omnitrix was Swamp Fire, and then the Ultimatrix used Swamp Fire, then Ultimate Swamp Fire. We never actually see the first alien Ben uses with the new Omnitrix, but for the audience, it's Lodestar. But again, most Omniverse transformations are just the alien sliding over him like a Venom symbiote suit.
Not what I was going for. I can work with this.
And Lodestar's mouth moves when he talks now.
On it!
Ooh, that's a cool track. I don't think this gets repeated a lot.
On it!
And we see Lodestar has like this magnetic filter around his hands when he's about to use his powers. That's new. And they're about to do a maneuver that we've seen in UAF. They did it in, I think it was The Purge, where Lodestar launches Kevin magnetically.
I'm losing my mind.
Get it? Another great shot. I love running shots when they're done very intensely. fans. Yeah, Omniverse is very saturated with sound effects. Not like in an annoying sense, just in a very noticeable sense. Like, wow, every single action has a sound to complement it. Some sounds fit better than others, but I appreciate the attention to detail. It's very visually and very audibly full. Omniverse, it pours the cup so high, it's almost spilling out with content. See, even in the foreground right here, those bubbles are moving. That's a nice touch. Another lighting change. Now they're shading with like this purple tint to it. Nice to see Kevin's car as well.
Gwen, I can't believe you're really going to leave.
I can't either. You know, that whole sequence, it really showed how tight-knit this team was. I think I talked about this briefly in a previous breakdown or in some other video. Omniverse really should have started at least a season or even a couple of episodes with the main trio before splitting them off and introducing Rook. I think they were just so eager to reset up the new status quo for Omniverse, and they figured you do that in the pilot and they can tell their stories as they go. But in UAF, you see the trio go through so many trials, they get so close, they get so powerful. Now they're like a perfect, well-knit group together. I think it would have been neat to see a little bit of that more before sending them away. In fact, you can even still bring in Rook. Maybe Gwen and Kevin have been planning to move for a while, as they do in the show. They don't tell Ben, they just tell Max. And Max calls in Rook to be a fourth member of the team. He's like, hey, can the trio train this newbie for a little bit? And then once they all get used to Rook, Gwen and Kevin reveal that this was done so that Ben can adjust to his new partner before they leave. Whereas here, it's like they leave and then we get Rook. And it works, you know. I'm just saying what I would have liked to have seen, but it still works this way. It's just unfortunate that we don't get more of this. This is peak.
There are plenty of colleges right here near Bellwood.
Not quite the same as the Ivy League.
So Gwen got into an Ivy League at 16, which is insane. Just plays up to her intellect more. And of course, I have to talk about how the characters look in this. Also, I don't want to spend every single breakdown talking about the art style differences because every breakdown will be here infinitely. It's a new show with a new art style. Everything is going to look different. So if you're expecting me to talk about the changes between every character, every alien, every set, I might touch on them briefly, but I can't make a whole thing out of it. But I mean, the main trio, of course, I'll give them that light. As I've been saying, I'm so used to these designs now, it doesn't faze me. I feel like Gwen works a lot more than people give credit for. I don't mind the freckles. In fact, I like them. As for Kevin, I don't know if he would go back to wearing ruggedy clothes anymore. I feel like he was starting to evolve past the need to be like a hoodlum street rat type character. I felt like this was just to give him the same vibe he had in the classic series, but character-wise, it doesn't really make sense. I don't mind the holsters either. I probably would have saved those for when he returns in season 2. And the necklace as well. It's just like, with Kevin, it feels like he's wearing a costume almost. Like, this doesn't feel like he's naturally wearing clothes. This is like he's dressing up to make a statement or something, and I just don't know if Kevin's that kind of person.
We've spent years saving the world. I just want to see some of what I've been saving.
A valid reason to go, honestly.
Well, hurry back, Kevin. I'm not coming back, Ben. This is goodbye?
Of course not. There are holidays, semester breaks.
That's them giving themselves an out. They're like, we could bring them back, don't worry. But right now, the show isn't about them anymore. In fact, I feel like I should touch on the fact that like the whole reason they're leaving and Rook's coming in is the studio felt like the show was becoming too much about Kevin and Gwen rather than Ben, and they wanted the show to focus on Ben more, so they got rid of Gwen and Kevin. It's quite an extreme decision. I mean, they could have just made more episodes about Ben or given Ben the same development that they gave Kevin and Gwen. Because when you think about it, if that's true and the show really did focus more on Kevin and Gwen, then that really speaks to how much they've developed and thought about and written these characters. Both of these two have gone through so much and really evolved in all of their aspects, in power, in personality, in motivation, in understanding of who they are and who they want to be. And I think fans became very attached to that. It's like you sat through and went through this journey with them just to send them away. It feels like they were writing too much with the intention that this could be a new version of Ben 10 for new fans to enter in, like making sure this is a solid entry point, then respecting everything they built up prior. They're like, all right, we finished Kevin and Gwen's development, now let's get rid of them. And I'm sure it wasn't as cut and dry as that. I don't even think a lot of the writers may have wanted to get rid of them. I can't speak on any of that. I'm just saying from a fan's perspective, it's really unfortunate we're losing them as characters because they're very enjoyable.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Count on it.
If you listen, this is our first time hearing the Omniverse motif that is the most common. The 4-note de-escalation, the da-na-na-na-na. You can hear that here.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
And our first time hearing it is during an emotional scene, which I appreciate.
Take care of yourself, doofus.
You too, dweeb.
I like that though. Speaks a lot to how far they've come. And there they go.
I'm a superhero. I can do this alone, no problem.
Now, I've spoken a lot about how Kevin and Gwen had pretty solid development over the years. In terms of Ben's development, mostly due to the fault of the studio, his characterization is very flip-floppy. He learns a lot of the same lessons over and over again. Nothing really seems to stick, and he's kind of just a product of whatever the plot needs him to be. So hearing something like this, after all the other times he's learned how much he needs a team, how important it is to work with others, and have somebody watching your back, hearing him say something like this, it's like, oh my god. But in this episode, I feel like it kind of works because maybe it's him trying to convince himself he'll be okay without Kevin and Gwen. Like, he's overcompensating for the fact that now that they're gone, he's like, all right, fine, I don't need a team. But you'll soon learn that that's not entirely the case. The longer the show goes on, you'll be like, oh shit, he really is resetting as a character all over again, and we're really going to have to go through all of these lessons he's already learned all over again. He's going to learn about teamwork, he's going to learn about respect, he's going to learn about how the Omnitrix isn't the only thing that he needs to fight battles. So while I can give it a pass in this episode, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a very frustrating journey. Mr. Smoothie. I'm pretty sure this sign is literally traced from UAF. Omniverse does that a lot, where they'll take a background from either UAF or Classic and trace it over in the Omniverse style, just to save time. You know, why do something from scratch if you don't have to? But I think it's really cool just for the comparison factor when you can go back and forth on how something looks. Plus, Omniverse does make changes here and there with some of the backgrounds, as you'll see later, but a lot of them are just branded over with their own outlines and the square textures. But you'll notice right away, Mr. Smoothie here, it has its own unique swirling texture in the building. I think that's a nice touch.
Nah, wouldn't be the same.
This is also the only Omniverse episode where you see Ben drive his car. That was something that wasn't mandated. That was just something they wanted to get rid of. I think only Derek spoke to it. I don't want to blame this all on him, but he was pretty much just like, yeah, I don't like the car, so we're getting rid of the car.
Nah.
I do like the reflection in the screen, though. Max's plumbing. So Max apparently has just had this plumbing store the entire time and is only being brought up now. You're going to see that a lot in Omniverse, but you know, every show has been guilty of that. There's characters that apparently just knew the Tennysons the whole time. Things that people have developed off screen. Stuff that people do in between episodes. But I mean, having a whole shop, that's a stretch. I like the idea of it though, so you know, it's passable. I don't think anybody's really bothered by it. It's kind of just like a, oh wow, so this has been a thing the whole time. Let's see, boom, this establishing shot right here, caked with detail. But dude's gotta clean his bathroom. Now we get to see the dramatic entrance of the plumbers. Again, all good shots. It looks very cool. When they first introduced this, I thought this would be a mainstay for the series, like a staple of it. I think they only actually used the secret bathroom entrance like maybe like 3 or 4 times. It doesn't show up nearly as much as you'd think with all the focus it's getting. And the plumber logo has been changed to a red spot as opposed to the Omnitrix badge, which I also think is great. It's so simple. I like to think it developed from like super ancient alien times before they had like the appropriate technology and resources and everything they need. The only thing they could do to show that there is a sign for help is put a red dot somewhere. Like maybe it was made of berries or blood or something. If you saw the red circle somewhere, you would know you're safe. Someone's coming to help. But I do like you see the shadow of it getting more in focus and getting closer as it lands. Now this is very seamless CG. You can barely tell, but with every frame it looks so still. Just like that tree in the beginning, Omniverse is very good at blending together its animated characters, its backgrounds, and its CG. One amazing thing that this art style does is perfected blending together all of those different elements to look the exact same thing. This guy is 2D animated, this is 3D animated, and this is a background they planted in. But just from this one frame, it looks like it's all drawn to be this shot. That is very well done. We see Master Patellade return. We'll talk more about him later when he's relevant. You see Ben walk forward and literally change color palettes. More amazing music. I don't think you hear this a lot either. The early episodes of Omniverse, there's so many different tracks. There's such a huge variety. Towards the later seasons, they slim it down and start reusing the same like 5 or 7 tracks. But there's a lot of tracks they don't use as often as they should. Like we don't hear this one. Maybe not even outside of this episode. But if you look in the background right here, you see Blue Kitchen Jariba right there walking on by. So technically they debut right here in this episode. This looks like it was a pain to animate. Max is another Omniverse design that I don't really vibe with. I gotta say, at least from my personal perspective, this episode isn't making that grand of an impression on me. This shows a lot of the changes for the worse. There's a lot of changes Omniverse does for the better, but those come later. As for this pilot, it just looks like they're just changing around a lot of things that people care about.
Goulash. It's fresh.
Just casually pulls out a gun and shoots it.
I think I'll go back out on patrol.
Ben, before you go, I just got the data in on your new...
So Max was about to tell Ben about Rook right now. This background, for instance, this is magnificent. You can kind of see how this center console is like a ship too, with thrusters and everything, keeping it in chamber, but they don't reveal that until like almost the end of the show. Now everything is red with solid black shading. We've gotten so many different color palette changes, and we've just began. We're like 8 minutes into the episode.
I got this.
Wait for backup.
I don't need a team. I'm me.
Again, it's like he just lost Gwen and Kevin, probably just trying to push those feelings down, but once you realize like this is the mainstay, this is really how Ben feels. I can rationalize it like that, but I'm not ready for him to lose all that development again. Still using his car, nice. Let's see the rocks, the texturing, the shading, all this stuff. Looks great. And our first look at Kyber, and what we'll later learn to know is Zed. But right now, this creature is nameless. Although, I'm not sure why he wears the Nemetrix on his shoulder sometimes. Maybe it's just for the action figure, but technically that never needs to leave Zed's collar. Zed's actually voiced by Paul Eiding, who voices Grandpa Max. Anytime you hear Zed making sounds and such, that's just picture Paul Eiding. I love Kyber's whistling too. You see the holes on his jaw flex open. Now this is a transformation. This is what Ben's alien morphing should look like. And it does sometimes. Sometimes transformations look phenomenal in Omniverse, but yeah, most of the time it's like he's putting on a suit. This right here is called Crabdozer, one of Heat Blast's predators. We'll learn more about that soon enough.
You must be what took the building down.
Now we get an actual look at how the Omniverse Omnitrix looks. It's touchscreen technology. He places his fingers on the dial. Now, I don't mean to keep focusing on the negatives. I even made a whole video on all the positives of Omniverse, but I don't want to feel like I can't express my own opinions either. I don't like this at all. I feel like this would be so impractical. The faces are this tiny and they all just cut. Even in this screenshot right now, like I can't really tell who I'm looking at unless I like pause it and I'm really analyzing it. I can only imagine in real life just tiny icon faces. It's just, I don't like the look of it, and I don't like the practicality of it. I liked the full body holograms much more. I've seen defense for it being how you can see multiple aliens at a time, which is more useful, but I mean, how much time are you really saving? And this part is the most frustrating for me too, where you select the alien on the touchscreen interface, and this dial pops up exclusively just for Ben to smack it back down, even though we'll later know when Azimuth points out that Ben shouldn't be smacking the watch.
I expected more dexterity out of those fat fingers of yours. Stop banging so hard on my Omnitrix.
Because the whole point of this dial right here for the first 3 Omnitrix devices was this core rotating is how you selected the aliens.
Yeah. Eeny, meeny, miny.
Gotta stop that water. I think Jetray will be a little faster than this.
But now you don't even need that. You use this thing. So if this thing pops up just for Ben to smack it down, and then it turns out he's not supposed to be smacking it down, it's just kind of stupid. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's pretty weird. Like sure, Azimuth may have designed it for it to be just for you to place it back down, but we all know what it was really for. They put this thing here so that the show can have the iconic Ben smacking down the Omnitrix. It was designed for you to do that, but I just would have liked it better if he still used the core to change his aliens, to select them. Sort of like what I did did in 5YL where he activates the Omnitrix and this thing splits open to reveal the core and the holograms are on the core. That's what I prefer, but let me know how you feel about the holograms down below. If you prefer the icon faces, or if you prefer the holograms, or even the silhouettes. What's your favorite Omnitrix display?
Humongousaur!
You'll notice Ben gets his own different void colors. It's a green background with white Kirby dots, where his younger self also had the green background but with dark green Kirby dots. It's to separate their transformation sequences, but the animation itself, let's take a look at that. You see the Omnitrix dematerialize. Look, it like pushes into itself into Spider Monkey's arm. Actually, this part flies off. Pieces of the Omnitrix are flying off. Skin grows over 2 of his fingers while the other 2 recede into him. I like that. That's really good. Another arm pushes out of the side, ripping open his shirt, spins around, opens up his eyes. Spider Monkey has 6 eyes now in this series, and his nose is put on his forehead. I think that's a very interesting choice. He still mistransforms. This is supposed to be the perfect Omnitrix. As Azimuth put it, the Omnitrix. And with how experienced and well-versed Ben was with the Omnitrix commands with the previous devices, even knowing like secret codes and voice commands and all that stuff, I don't like that he still mistransforms. And again, I know that there's a in-universe explanation. We learn that it's user error, and sure, that's a great way to make up for it, because it is more fun when Ben gets the wrong aliens. But I just would have liked if we moved past this by now, and they make Ben's battles challenging because he has to figure out the best way to defeat an enemy or solve an issue, and not just because, oh, whoop, I'm the wrong guy again.
If I was Humongousaur, you would be so sorry.
And he could be Humongousaur. And there's an episode that's going to throw all of this out the window, which I can't wait to get to, just to have my own opinion about it out there. But for now, let's just pretend that mistransforming is a valid thing. I'm surprised this isn't killing him. The hard black shadows start slowly fading to the other colors of the building as it falls. I think that's a really cool detail. Kyber watching in the distance. I don't get why Kyber's calling him back, though. He had the advantage. Ben was freaking running for it. There's no reason to stop this fight right now. If Ben was winning, then sure. In fact, he probably could have been doing like a Spider-Man to Doctor Strange thing, where as he's running around, he's like creating this webbed up trap, and then it reveals he's got Crabdozer all tied up in this complicated trap of webs. You know, let Ben be creative. He mistransforms into Spider Monkey, runs away from him for about a minute, and then it's over. I don't know. If you're trying to sell me on the show, this ain't it. Let me see Ben be Ben. Ben's been heroing for like 6 years now, and it doesn't really look like it. This is what being okay without a team looks like for you, Ben?
That Tennyson is worthy prey.
How? He ran the whole time. What was that? Just freaking booked it the whole time, and Kyber's like, ooh, yes, very good, Tennyson. And it's like, was it really, though? But this, of course, looks very good. The morph back to Ben as a silhouette.
Is it gone?
Who are you?
Hakmar, this is my place.
And our first introduction to Pakmar, a shopkeeper in Undertown. Not a bad character, not a bad design. I kind of like Pakmar.
Can I help?
No, I don't want any more trouble.
Oh, you're gonna be getting it.
Don't even want to know.
I do. What the hell was that?
Some off-world lowlifes are shaking down us law-abiding businessmen. We pay them paid night, they protect us.
So there is a gang going around shaking down people, just as Pakmar says. But that's not what Kyber was. Kyber was just coincidentally here during the events of the gang shakedown, so they can take the blame for what he's doing.
We don't pay. They're the ones we need the protecting from. Every alien shop in Bellwood.
Now that's interesting. Pakmar says Bellwood. I don't think Pakmar has started setting up shop in Undertown yet. But also goes to show that alien shops are becoming a regular thing in Bellwood. The first one that we saw was Mr. Bauman's back in Ultimate Alien, which, speaking of, we'll later see the Omniverse version coming up in this very episode. And this is that shop. I like how there's all this graffiti too. Every city I've ever seen is like covered in graffiti. If you ever go to Worcester, one of the largest cities in New England, there's graffiti everywhere, but like there's murals, there's tags, there is some gang related stuff. But this right here is another background that I don't know if it was redrawn or just referenced for, but when Mr. Bauman's shop was in Ultimate Alien, it was shown at this angle, and you know, there's no competition. Omniverse's version looks so much better. It's not just the detail, but the architecture. There's a lot of thought put into the windows, the columns, this little segmented part right up here. Somebody on the crew had to have been very knowledgeable in architecture and landscapes and all of that, because this doesn't just come from trying to make a building. There's a lot of thought and understanding of design put into here. And last little thing, if you look right here, this right here says Mordecai, and this right here says Pops Rocks. So I think these are regular show references. This one over here says something 11. Maybe it was Kevin himself. Canned Tiffin. Now this makes a lot of sense, you know, it's pretty much just like, stop eating Tiffin, have a substitute instead. I used to think this was a little weird, but the more I think about it, it's like, you know, it's fine. This makes a lot of sense. We got a Nemuino right here, which will become the inspiration for Pesky Dust and a few other notable background characters. That's another thing I love about Omniverse, is all of its background characters are reused many times. So it's like, you get used to the citizens there. It feels lived in. You're like, oh yeah, I've been recognizing this guy around and this guy. So it's like, they actually live in this town. They're from Bellwood.
All right, Mr. Bauman. Anything about alien protection racket in Bellwood?
Okay, then. Nice seeing you again, Ben. Enjoy a free glop and beef sandwich.
Mr. Bauman here is also voiced by Corey Burton and has a noticeably different appearance and manner than he did in Ultimate Alien. In Omniverse, he was based on a character named Mr. Whipple.
George Whipple, you old sidewinder.
Tex, can you help me stop those ladies from squeezing Charmin bathroom tissue? Be out of town by sundown.
Mr. Whipple.
A lot of things on Omniverse are heavily referencing something else. So Omniverse is kind of like a collection of different pickings and shavings from a variety of different media influences. And I think that's what helps make the world feel more colorful and creative.
I pay them, they leave.
What if I just blend in like any other customer? Disguise.
Yeah, see, even pausing, I can barely make out who each of these are unless I'm like looking real closely and establishing face for face. I don't see this being a great idea. Cannibal's probably not the best alien to go with, but, you know, it plays into the humor. Also, props to whoever had to animate all of these cans getting knocked over. Cannibal is now voiced by David Kay, another chance to give D a break.
That was me. My bad.
This right here is Solid Plug, who does get more development than some of the other background characters in the series.
How's it going, fellow aliens?
How do you do, fellow kids?
Nice weather we're having here on Earth, huh?
Now, this design works a lot for Cannibal being very expressive, but as for the true nature of this Arborian Pelorota, I'm not sold on it. I think the flat underarms is an interesting choice, and, you know, there's potential for enjoyment there, but not from me. Oh, boy. Just change forms, man.
That'll buff right out.
Oof, and no back shell. This is a whole new version of that kind of error. Cannibal's back shell has always been kind of an issue, but most of the times they just miscolor the back of him with his skin, but here they're full on drawing a stripe. I'm wondering where this comes from, since that's almost definitely not on the model sheet. I do like that we're seeing so many cracks into the ground too, and the chairs aren't just bending. And here's Rook.
Hey, you gonna eat the rest of that?
Rook's such a nice dude. Look how fast he moves. He's just whipping all around. Ben also seems to be willing to eat this, except for Max's cooking, so it seems like it's less about the idea that Max is eating all of these gross alien foods and stuff, and more of the fact that he just can't cook.
Pay up, Bauman.
And here's Bubble Helmet, Festina, and Liam. Liam over here is voiced by Paul Eiding. You'll notice Paul gets a lot more roles in Omniverse outside of Grandpa Max. Bubble Helmet is John DiMaggio. And Festina here is voiced by Morgan Lofting, but I don't see her in the credits, so I don't think she speaks in this episode. As I've said how many Omniverse designs are references to something else, Festina here is based on Crasher from the GoBots.
Accidents happen, maybe to you.
I don't want any trouble.
He's a chicken, so gotta act like a chicken. I forgot Bubble Helmet could stretch his arms like that. Oh man, did you really have to smash his counter though, Ben? That was unnecessary. Well, in terms of animation, look at the cracks and folds into it. Such great detail. But we're still drawing the back stripe like so consistently. Is this on the model sheet, or was this a storyboard artist? Like, this doesn't just happen. Okay, I forgot he could do this stuff too.
I'll pay you not to do this, Ben.
Really? I mean...
He considers it. I mean, technically Rook is the one who takes them out, so he could take the money and then have Rook go for it, but he doesn't know that yet. Ooh, that's cool. So he's flipping these sticks around, shooting lasers everywhere. That's a very unique style of weapon. Rook's just chilling, casually deflects a laser with a spoon, which shoots right back at Bubble Helmet, briefly foreshadowing his insane skill set. Oh boy.
I'll clean it up later, man.
Man, please change forms. You don't need to be Cannon Bolt. There's dozens of other aliens that can be less destructive. It's not even like he's helpless and he's just trying to do the right thing. Like, he does not need to be Cannon Bolt right now. This is unnecessary. But look at that. They do draw his back shell right there. I do like how that works, though. But it also, you know, this is supposed to be a bunch of gangs going around shaking up shop owners. This is supposed to be relatively serious. And, you know, I'm all for jokes and humor put in between battles and plots and whatnot. Usually jokes are good ways to break up the seriousness and the tension. But, I mean, Liam pretty much is a giant joke character. So it's a little hard to take his intimidation seriously. Like, I didn't even really absorb the plot line that's happening the first time I saw this because, you know, I'm just distracted by this giant chicken man coming in and the bubble guy and the cyborg woman. I guess it also plays into the nature of how weird Ben 10 can get. Like, yes, this chicken man can be threatening. He can be a legitimate force to be reckoned with who's shaking down shops and part of a gang that's like making everybody quake in their boots. But I mean, if he's getting distracted from birdseed like this, and this is like a legitimate way that they're going to take him out, I mean, what's there to be afraid of? But a nice little music cue. You hear some notes from Old MacDonald Had a Farm when he walks forward. You know, if you're gonna do this, you might as well play it full force, which is, like I said, exactly what Omniverse does. If they're gonna do something, they're going for it 100%. So you either like it or you don't, but it would be ill to say it wasn't done well.
Craterize this place. Not a problem.
Here he just pops into the ball form, no transition between, but it's hidden pretty well in motion.
Not a problem.
Oof, that could have killed him. But a very nice, intense shot for this. And then he doesn't just slide down, his whole face stretches downwards too. You see his nose point upward, the hair fold upwards as well.
Isn't this where your friends show up and save the day?
Oh snap, here he comes. Dramatically throws off his disguise. And the first thing we see from the proto tool is the archery weapon. Pulls this out. This is one of my favorite things the proto tool does, is the archery. And I love the little electrical residue it leaves behind when it's shot. Good stuff. Folds it back and it clamps onto his shoulder. I always thought that was cool too. Rather than just keeping it on his back or on his holster, I think this is a pretty unique spot for it. I don't know how he activates it though. This seems to be done with his mind. Excellent. And yeah, it doesn't seem like Festina talks at all.
Rook Blanco, Magister Tennyson sent me.
Oh, it's so effortless. He doesn't even look behind him. He just curls forward onto his hand, doing a one-hand handstand, jump kicks upward and smacks him with both of his feet and lands perfectly in the same spot.
I'm your new partner.
One of the rare times we'll hear him say contractions. I think this was written before they came out with contractions are swears to Ravanagander's rule. Or maybe Rook's just trying to swear to sound cool to Ben.
I'm your new partner. It's an honor to be working with you, sir.
See how he said it's there too? This might be the only episode he does it. Maybe he says a few more contractions in part 2, but they quickly do away with that.
I don't want a new partner. I'm Ben Tennyson. I've saved the universe like 1 billion times.
See, he really does believe he doesn't need a team. It wasn't just overcompensating for Gwen and Kevin. So we're gonna reset him full force for this show.
I am well aware. It's required study at Diploma's Academy. Chapter and a half.
Still something. How many people can say they have a chapter and a half of required study anywhere?
I was kind of looking forward to being on my own now.
He's looking forward to it? Oh man. He's totally over Kevin and Gwen instantly. It only works if you just watch Omniverse. That's the only way. If you were with Ben for the past 150 episodes or so and saw his journey along the way, he should not be acting like this.
I waited to see if you needed my assistance.
Yeah, like how does he activate this? It's all mental, I guess. And the obligatory net, every cool thing shoots out an electric net. It is useful though, like I'm not knocking the net, I'm just saying like this is a very common piece of technology in the Ben 10 universe, so it makes a lot of sense that the Proto Tool also has this.
Proto Tool, the most versatile tech in the known universe.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Does it have a mute button?
Sir?
Come on, Ben, don't be a jerk about it.
I got this now.
We have a whole separate scene, this quick black frame just for the flash, even though you see the flash happen here. That's odd. And we get our third transformation sequence of the episode. So this one is a little bit more of a transformation than Feedbacks and Spider Monkeys. You see the segmentosapien parts start building around his hand. In fact, you even see the Omnitrix slightly turn into it, and all these moving parts are clamping into him. That's animated very well. It's almost similar to Diamond Head's transformation, where you see a bunch of crystals growing over him. With him, you're seeing a bunch of blocks grow over him. But it does work. Like, look at the way it shapes around his head. Yeah, I think this is animated very well. You see the black lines start splitting through his chin and up on his shoulders. Couldn't have been easy to pull off. I don't know how I feel about the green aura that they put over his transforming body. It looks kinda messy, but it also works. Like, I keep going back and forth on loving it and being like, we could do without it. So discounting Feedback, who was the first 11-year-old Ben exclusive alien for now in Omniverse, this is the first time we're seeing a new alien in Omniverse for 16-year-old Ben, which I think works for the pilot of this.
Who's this guy?
Ben's never even used him before, so the audience gets to learn along with Ben what this guy is all about. He's strong enough to just plant his arms into the ground and cause these cracks because, you know, fuck Mr. Bauman, I guess.
I did not see that coming.
Builds himself back together, so he has regeneration. I like that you do see somewhat of a gorilla shape with him. You see it in the nose and the brow and the way he carries himself. But those sounds, I can't stop thinking about the Lego video games.
Hey, Rook, get over here and disable the force field for me.
I like that you do hear this like strained echoing in his voice as he speaks, like when you talk with like plastic around your head or through a tunnel or something because he's plastic.
Disable the force field for me. I'll deal with those guys.
You hear that? It's kind of a neat effect. Now this morph from his body into the wall is done very well. Nothing ever just pops into place. All of the lines are accounted for and morphed appropriately for a smooth transition. But you know, it has to be said, the primary color, literal Lego aesthetic of blocks, it's stretching it pretty far with what Ben 10 is all about. Like, there are blocks lovers out there, and Ben 10 will continue to do weird things, but you can't sit there with a straight face and tell me you can see this guy in the first 3 series like nothing ever happened. You gotta be lying to yourself at that point. He does not fit anywhere outside of Omniverse. But his animations do look very cool. First he builds his platform back together, then his head comes in, and see it comes in from a side and then closes around like that. There is a lot of care put into how he's animated.
How's it coming?
And he could just regrow his head, that's cool. So every part of him that gets destroyed, he can rebuild. So he doesn't have that much durability, but he does have very fast regeneration. Now Rook pulls this little missile from behind his back. I would have liked to see it come out of one of these many pockets that we never see him open.
I can't break the code in time. We need to detonate it away from the populace. Speak English.
That was English. Are you kidding me? You can't understand the phrase?
We need to detonate it away from the populace.
That's overcompensating. Not only regressing his character development, it's regressing his intelligence. And see, this chamber needs to split open first to give him room to slide up here, and then all of this unfolds as he walks away. So unlike a gelatinous shape-shifting character like Upgrade or Goop, there has to be a lot of procedure put into place on how he moves around. And I imagine it's challenging but also fun trying to figure out the different moving parts of blocks, how he goes about changing to all of these different shapes. But man, did he really have to look like this?
Wait! I have to scan for the presence of sentient life. All clear.
Good job, Rook. Legitimately.
I don't got it.
And see, Blocks' durability is very, very low. I do like how this disc spins around a little bit before he throws it. Even right here, where different segments are sliding open at first before he reshapes himself. Ooh, that's a weird sound. I don't think we ever hear that again. That's very weird.
Very nice of you to try to save me, though. Thanks, partner.
Rook here has a very, like, not husky, but just a voice that's very, like, rough around the edges. They were probably still trying to figure out exactly how to portray Rook. And, you know, as the more anybody voices a character, their voice evolves. But I'm liking how Rook sounds here.
Prototech armor. Very nice of you to try to save me, though.
Later on, his voice sounds a lot more cleaner. It sounds a lot higher, but it still sounds pretty good right now.
Thanks, partner.
Call me Ben, dude.
Okay, Ben, dude.
No way.
And our first look at Undertown, put together right below Bellwood. But Rook is unfazed. He just keeps going. But what do we have here?
Show no mercy.
Kyber here is voiced by David Kay, doing a very villainous Australian accent. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier, Feedback is voiced by Yuri Lowenthal. One of the few times Yuri actually gets to voice one of the aliens. Even though it's young Ben's alien, so it's like young Ben temporarily turns into teen Ben, which is pretty cool. And Blocks is voiced by Bumper Robinson, who also voices Rook, so for that whole sequence, they were pretty much talking to each other. And it's barely noticeable between the filters they put on Blocks and Bumper's portrayal. That's already very versatile acting. They misspelled Mr. Bauman in the credits, though, and they haven't come up with Zed's name yet. They just call her Dog. So that's part 1 of the Omniverse premiere. I'm gonna start off by giving the plot a 3 for the same reasons that I gave the classic series plot a 3. It's one of those things where the episode has to do a lot of heavy lifting in order to reintroduce you to this world, that the plot itself doesn't get that much emphasis. It's kind of just a typical Ben 10 story, which, you know, it works when it works, but for a series premiere, it's a lot less engaging, and I feel like that was on purpose because they recognize there's a lot you have to get used to. There's a lot that they have to show you, a lot they have to teach you about how Omniverse works. But when strictly talking about the plot, it's a typical gang shakedown. Ben learns about Rook, Kyber's subtly introduced, Kevin and Gwen are shipped away. It hits the story beats it needs to. There's no one thing to really rope you in. If anything, I would say the malware stuff at the beginning. That sets up something interesting, but beyond a setup, it's not enough to carry the rest of the episode in terms of interest. I'd say the interest of this episode comes from the fact that for longtime fans, it's so different and you're curious about all of the changes, and for newer fans, you're learning about this world for the first time. But when you think about what's actually happening in the episode and the short adventure that you get to go on with Ben, it's just another story. Characterization, I'm also going to give a 3. Ben's regression is noticeable, but it's not as bad as it has been beforehand. It's just they're setting you up where you need to just accept the fact that because this is a new iteration of the series, he's gonna be going through a lot of the same beats again for the sake of Omniverse standing on its own a lot more than strictly being the third sequel to the classic series. Like, Omniverse really wants to be its own show, but it still has to tie itself to what happened beforehand, and one of its ways to do that is just dialing back Ben's character a little bit. He's a little less intelligent, he's a little less mature, there's some lessons he has unlearned, but he still more or less feels like Ben. Rook, there's not much you can really say about him. He didn't come in until like the last 5 minutes of the episode, and both between his betrayal and his writing, he's not quite there as a character yet, but it's enough for you to understand who Rook is. In fact, you didn't really get enough time with anybody in this episode to really know who they are, so it just couldn't be as strong for the characterization. Again, it's really weighed down by how much new things it needs to introduce for you. It can't focus on the plot, it can't focus on the character, it needs to focus on the setup, and while it succeeds in there, I can't just give it a pass and say, oh, well, the characterization is a 5, especially with them still figuring out Rook and dialing Ben back a little bit. Visuals is a solid 5. This episode is beautiful. Everything about it is fantastic. I think that's a given. Importance is a 5 because this is the series premiere. You're going to need this segue into Omniverse in order to really get used to it. Without it, it's much harder to just jump into any random episode if you're coming from a previous series, or even if you're trying to start Ben 10 for the first time. And entertaining, it's a 5. Whether it comes from curiosity or genuine enjoyment, it's fascinating. It's hard to be bored watching this, regardless of how you feel about it. I'm personally, I was entertained by it. The things I didn't like about it didn't ruin it for me. It kept my interest, which means it did its job correctly. So that's gonna leave off The More Things Change at a 21 out of 25. It's a great introductory episode, but that's all it really is, an introductory episode. So there's so much more I can talk about with the transition from UAF to OV. But seeing as how we have 79 more episodes to get through, I think I'm going to take my time and sprinkle those little anecdotes little by little throughout these next couple of breakdowns. But for now, I think it's worth mentioning that Feedback was designed by Dave Johnson, the original character designer for the 2005 series. They brought him back just for this one alien to make sure Feedback feels like a classic series alien. And while he does get tweaked into the Omniverse style for him to fit the current show, I think it was a really cool idea to bring Dave back for this. For last week's poll, over half of you agreed that you do in fact like the Omniverse Omnitrix, and 9% of you went as far to say that it was your favorite. For me, I probably would have said it's alright. I'm not a huge fan of the functionality, but going with a touchscreen interface was a very bold move, and a nice idea to try to stay modern, and it's got a pretty slick design when not in use, I'll give it that. For this week's poll, I want to know, were you one of the ones that gave Omniverse a chance during its initial airing? Let me know what you think in the community tab when this video is live. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And as always, keep it fizzy.